Well, ladies, I think it is time.
Time for what?
Time to review the new holy horror from A24, of course. Heretic is the latest effort from writing-directing team Scott Beck and Brian Woods. They wrote A Quiet Place and Haunt. Also, The Boogeyman in 65. The duo tends to be pretty hit or miss with old Jake here, so I didn't really know what to expect going into this one. The film centers on two missionaries trapped in the home of the heretic, Mr. Reed, a cold, calculated man who forces our characters to play a deadly game of faith. Did Heretic make me believe, or was this blueberry pie undercooked? Let's escape the horrors of reality and talk a little bit about this one. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Heretic is a thought-provoking thriller that sacrifices suspense to push its message. This is one of those movies where if you're interested in the subject matter, you'll definitely like it, but if you're expecting a pulse-pounding horror movie, you may walk away disappointed. Sure, the film features many horror elements, but its prime objective is to push its agenda. This film is a masterfully crafted commentary on religion, presenting itself as a new take on the Saw format. You can gather that from the trailer and the use of the song The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, which is literally the same song from the Saw X trailer. You might want to remember that piece of information for a point I want to make way later on in this video. This is Scott Beck and Brian Woods' first venture with A24. Heretic was shot during the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strikes because many A24 productions were granted interim agreements. To clarify, A24 immediately agreed to SAG's new terms, so they were able to continue shooting a ton of stuff last year, unlike the majority of film studios. That's why Heretic makes a very big point in its credits to make sure that you know that no generative AI was used in the making of this film. Beck and Woods are already getting some points for that one. The film features many of the Beck and Woods staples, such as a ton of easy-to-spot Chekhov's guns and some emotional moments, but the most effective element is the film's theological commentary. There have been many religious horrors in the past few years, and not many of them stick out the way Heretic does. Movies like Immaculate and Saint Maud comment on the manipulative dark side of religion really well, but Heretic finds a unique way to show both sides. I think it's really thought-provoking that a big part of Heretic's message is how positive religion can be, while also diving into the horrors of it. This is probably the best script from Beck and Woods based on its consistent complexities, but I have to praise Hugh Grant in what is his best performance to date. I'd only seen two other movies from the guy beforehand where I honestly didn't care for his character in either film, but I was shocked to see an effectively creepy and goofy performance here. There's a brilliance in the way he's written here. You might think that he has a certain motivation throughout the film, but he's constantly telling you what's really going on here. It's tough to decide as an audience member if you can have faith in him or not. No spoilers yet, but the answer to that question is wonderfully complicated, and I loved the end result of this experiment of a thriller. I was of course expecting a great performance from Sophie Thatcher here, who I can't wait to see go on an awful date with Jack Quaid in next year's Companion, but I'm the most surprised by Chloe East's performance. This is another actor I'm pretty unfamiliar with that really blew me away here. I didn't expect this character arc to go the way that it did. I'm excited to watch the highly rated werewolf movie she leads called The Wolf of Snow Hollow. I need something to hype me up for Wolfman coming next year, and I've seen The Howling far too many times. To finish up the spoiler-free section of this video, if you can get into the message of this movie, the agenda that it's trying to push, you can get into it. But if you're not for that woke garbage, you might not be into this one as much as I am. Whether its horror elements were effective or not, I took a lot away from this movie, making it a pretty big surprise from 2024 horror. I'm warning you now, we're gonna get into spoilers, so go see it, come on back, you know the drill. Heretic presents itself as a certain type of horror movie from the trailers that you guys have all seen now, but I'm telling you, some people are gonna walk away from this film very disappointed because I don't feel like that's the driving force of this flick at all. While the commentary is carefully crafted in nearly every sequence, the scares are pretty thin. It's easily the biggest con I have with this flick. Heretic is a better allegory for the dangers and warmth of religion rather than the next Hereditary. There's a scene where a woman presented as the original prophet of God allegedly dies and becomes resurrected. I think it's supposed to be the big scare scene of the movie, even featuring a Conjuring-esque jump scare and a somewhat tension-fueled sequence involving matches, but it ended up being a low point for me. Basically, if Hugh Grant's character wasn't on screen talking about his cynical take on theology, I would kind of lose interest. With that being said, you quickly learn from its dialogue-heavy opening that Heretic is much more about the provocative game Mr. Reed traps the missionaries and the audience in for the entire film. If you actually enjoy the cheesy soap opera plot of the Saw movies and want to have a potentially blasphemous discussion about about religion simultaneously, you could get into this one. That crowd might be a little niche though. There's also a surprising appearance from Topher Grace. He's Eddie Brock in Spider-Man 3. Ooh, that's the role that killed his career. How about Eric Foreman from that 70s show? His character Elder Kennedy kind of looks like Mormon Corey Feldman, so I didn't even recognize him until the credits rolled. Still, it's always great to see him pop up in new projects. Diving deeper into Mr. Reed's cynicism on religion, I think there's almost a dark humor about the way he stomps on the beliefs of his guests with logical evidence. To really dive into a lot of these sequences, I want to go all the way back to the very opening of this flick before Mr. Reed gets introduced. The movie begins with the most prude conversation you've ever heard about condoms. It's almost a little hard to listen to. The cringe conversation between the missionaries thankfully comes to an end after Sister Paxton admits to watching Corn with a P, gasp, and telling Sister Barnes that she found proof of the soul in a certain video. I think this is an oddly perfect way to start this movie because the conversation is all about a common misconception with a certain condom brand. For those who don't know, Magnum condoms have always advertised themselves as being for the, well, bigger dudes, if you catch my drift. But here's the real stats. Magnum condoms are 8.12 inches long with a width or girth of 2.12 inches, while Trojans are 7.62 inches long with 2 inches of girth. That's not even an extra inch of length, but the real ones out there know it's really all about the girth. And that's only 0.12 of an inch anyways. So Magnum's advertising campaign there isn't necessarily wrong, but it's also not the 12 inches one might expect. It's not the first time that I've been disappointed by penis size. Keeping a straight face through this section of the video has been challenging, but I promise there's a point to all of this silliness. That point being here that these missionaries believe that Magnum condoms are only for the well-endowed and not for us slightly above average fellas. They believe something that they've been told their entire lives without ever actually checking if it's true. This ends up being one of the key reasons why Mr. Reed chose these characters to put into his trap, which is emphasized later on with the entire resurrection sequence. The scares might have sucked there, but again, the agenda totally works. They saw something they believed to be true only based on what Mr. Reed was telling them. And he's like literally their kidnapper at this point, dude. There is one more key factor to Mr. Reed's scheme here, however. Before giving the girls the choice to go through the two doors, he presents a ton of shocking information to them. He also does a Jar Jar Binks impression, which I think is important.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
He explains that modern religion is just a new iteration of past beliefs, a copy of a copy. The story of an immaculate conception followed by a sacrifice and resurrection has been told time and time again throughout the ages. He even uses The Air That I Breathe as an example of this because Creep by Radiohead is essentially a melodic copy. A very different song though. He claims that he's found the original prophet and can show the two missionaries the one true religion. It of course ends up being total BS, and if you were paying close attention to the conversation earlier, Mr. Reed even admits that he's not talking to these girls to find the one true religion. Just like the blueberry pie candle trick from earlier, there are a ton of clues that suggest what Mr. Reed is trying to do here the entire time. Control! The whole point of this scene is to make himself seem superior to the missionaries so they listen to him. He believes that he can control these characters because in his mind they've already fallen victim to another master. To Mr. Reed, religion is a way to control others, and he's not necessarily wrong. Television evangelists use this technique to trick people into sending them money, and I'm shocked that never came up during this movie. Now, while yes, religion can be used as a manipulation technique, it can also be used as a vessel of hope for some people. Those people represented by Sister Paxton. In her case, religion is a good thing. It motivates her to keep going through life, and she's presented as happy in this movie despite getting ridiculed for her beliefs throughout. There's a scene early on where some teenagers pull her pants down to reveal she's wearing granny panties. For whatever reason, this keeps getting brought up throughout the entire film. The point here being is that religion can be many things, good and bad. Now, while 90% of this movie, pretty much everything with Mr. Reed's character showcases the dark side of religion, the final shot of this film shows the good side. This is what makes Heretic stand out from other holy horrors. Earlier on in the flick, Sister Paxton tells Sister Barnes that if she came back to life as a butterfly, she would specifically land on her loved one's hands, so they knew it was her. It's a wholesome moment between the two girls. Sister Barnes ends up dying at the end of this film after finishing off Mr. Reed, and Sister Paxton escapes. After she finally gets out of the house, the last shot of the movie is a butterfly landing on her hand. I think a lot of people are going to walk out of this movie interpreting that last scene as God is real, religion is real, and Mr. Reed was wrong. But I think it's trying to say something entirely different. It's saying that this simple coincidence holds value in Sister Paxton's life, whether God is real or not. There's a conversation earlier on where Paxton argues that her personal relationship with God means something. Religion can be used to control others, like how Mr. Reed demonstrates, but it can also be used as a wonderful personal tool, like how it is for Sister Paxton. I really enjoyed this flick, and I would go so far as to say that it's the best script from Beck and Woods thus far, but I think I still prefer A Quiet Place overall. That one's a little more fun, a little more traditional horror. I like monsters, what can I say? I still give Heretic an 8 out of 10. Sure, some of its scares don't really land for me, but the theological message here and everything it's trying to do there, it does. That works. Not bad. It's a very well-crafted think piece, even if it gets too goofy and the scares don't really land for me. It's a much better film than I was expecting, especially after being disappointed by the last two features from this team. Heretic is a major comeback. Hey everybody, before I wrap up this video, I want to remind you all to subscribe to my new YouTube channels, GullGotha, a horror video game page, and KillJoy Jake Retro, an offshoot of this channel. I love talking about new movies on this channel, but I created a brand new page so that I can talk about some older flicks I like. My first video on the Creep franchise goes up on November 13th, so make sure to subscribe to KillJoy Jake Retro. Also, let's try to get GullGotha to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We're halfway there, man. What did you think of Heretic? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.